Ship.
Cop Killer created such a firestorm of controversy, including death threats to record company employees, that Ice-T finally decided to pull the track from his album.
I'm not apologizing. What I'm doing is deal.
Beds, apparently. Yeah. So it was a surprise.
Yeah.
The Cocaine War, Lost in Bolivia, airs tonight on ABC.
Been seized, and there's a couple of tons, probably close to 4 tons of leaf in that pile. We have approximately 500 kilograms of cocaine that is burning in that small oven. This operation is designed to not only shut down the Chapari, but to close it off permanently. The Chapari is the second biggest producer of coca in the hemisphere.
This is where the cocaine comes from, and this is where American money and manpower are going. The Andean countries of South America, Bolivia, Colombia, and Peru. More than $1 billion over the past 3 years. The Drug Enforcement Administration, U.S. Army Special Forces, U.S. Navy, Air Force, CIA, Border Patrol, and the Coast Guard, they're all here.
I'm optimistic we're going to win this in Bolivia. The Bolivians are going to win this, and we're going to try to help them as much as we can.
How do I see, as an American living in Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles, Santa Fe, how do I see how you're doing?
Well, what I'd hope you'd see is that, one, you don't just live in Chicago or Santa Fe or New York anymore. You're a citizen of the world, and you can't isolate yourself from this problem. And the problems that you have with drugs doesn't start in Chicago. It starts in that little hectare down in the Chapari Valley where that coca is grown.
Bolivian President Jaime Paz Zamora's government receives more American aid than any other country in South America, nearly $350 million in the last 24 months alone. When we asked the United States government where we could go to see the war against drugs at its most effective, they told us to come here, to Bolivia. These are the Drug Enforcement Administration's Bolivian partners, the Special Anti-Narcotics Police Force, paid for and trained by the United States.
Bueno, en lo fondo.
There's a lot riding on the U.S.-Bolivian relationship because in every other Andean country, the U.S. war against drugs has been overwhelmed. In Colombia, after a decade of drug-related terrorism and assassinations, the government has cut a deal with the traffickers and refuses to extradite them to the United States. In Peru, in the midst of a continuing guerrilla war, the Constitution is suspended and the drugs keep flowing because the traffickers are paying off both the guerrillas and the army. And now, take a close look at Bolivia. This is the place the U.S. government said was its best hope. It's now become its only hope. The poorest country in South America, 1 in every 5 people in the workforce, owe their economic survival to the drug traffickers. The U.S. has intensified the fight against hundreds of thousands of Bolivians who wish to keep the drugs flowing out and the drug money flowing in. President Clinton will inherit a cocaine war in Bolivia that the United States cannot win. Tonight, we'll show you why.
Peter Jennings reporting. The Cocaine War, Lost in Bolivia. Brought to you by Tavis D.
When your sinus and nasal congestion feels this bad, what can you do? Last year, you wanted to call the doctor. Last year, you wanted a prescription. But this year, Tavis D in its full prescription strength is available without a prescription. Just 1 tablet helps relieve 12 hours worth of painful congestion and sneezing.
Guess what? I'll be there after all.
Tavis D. One tablet, 12 hours, and now no prescription.
Going fast. $10 million next month. There's going to be a new $10 million winner at American Family next month. You may have the winning entry right now. And
there's an irony to the escalation of the cocaine war in Bolivia. In spite of the U.S. claim that Bolivia is the country where the war can be won, despite the increase in funding, despite the presence of so many American agencies, from the CIA to the Border Patrol, despite all of that, we found the real work of the drug war, stopping the drugs and capturing the traffickers, is really done by very few people. In a country that produces a third of the world's cocaine, there are 30 agents from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. 30 agents in a country the size of Texas and California combined.
Sundance 855, Sundance 855, Viper 1.
The 30 agents spend most of their time on missions like this, a stakeout to capture a small plane coming to pick up a load of cocaine.
1 o'clock, we'll be standing by on this push, and we'll be going to the primary day at 6 a.m. Do you copy?
A DEA team has infiltrated undetected and is now hiding in the jungle, waiting for the plane near an airstrip, or pista, as it's called in Spanish. This is their backup team. Their job is to maintain constant radio contact with the team in the jungle.
Okay, I understand it's a go, and we'll be standing by on this push. This is Viper 1, radio check.
None of the Americans know how long they may have to wait. Drug enforcement agents spend a lot of time waiting in Bolivia.
Roger that, I have you saying we'll be standing by.
This mission, like every mission they conduct in Bolivia, began with a tip from an informant looking for a payoff. She told the DEA she often saw planes coming in to pick up loads of cocaine. It wasn't much to go on, but because she had been reliable in the past, team leader Bob Hartman decided to send a squad led by agents Pam Brown and Joe Bond into the jungle.
If the airplane lands, the game plan is for them to run out, take the airplane down, and all these people that live in the area of the pista are going to get real mad. At that time, the guys in the field are going to depend on us to jump on these helicopters and come in with the support. I'd say for every 10, maybe even 15 pistas that we set up on in similar circumstances, you'll be lucky to get one airplane out of that. But I'll tell you, there's nothing like that feeling when you're sitting there and you hear that drone in the background and he's coming in and he lands, never shuts down. All he does is turn around the other end, they come running out with the drugs, and it comes together, and that happens, and it makes it all worthwhile.
After 15 hours, it began to rain. There was no way a plane would land in this, but everyone would stay in place. Maybe the plane would come tomorrow. Another mission, this one a raid, began with this informant who claimed to know the secret hideout of 3 Colombian traffickers operating on Bolivian soil.
It's a good time to do this kind of operation. At that time, they're sleeping, so there will be no problem.
But the hideout was in an area so remote that any outsider would be recognized immediately. Team leader Reggie Gage knew that his only hope was to travel all night and take out the Colombians by surprise.
We're going to conduct this entire operation under the cloak of darkness, and we need to go in very quietly.
The team left at 10 o'clock, with the informant leading the way, across rough country only he knew, chasing a target only he could identify, looking for men the DEA had never seen. At midnight, the team arrived at a river the informant hadn't warned them about. By 3 a.m., the road the informant led them down had disappeared into a swamp. 3 of the team's 4 vehicles were up to their axles in mud.
We stuck too. Damn. Yeah, we stuck too.
5:30 a.m., still nowhere near their target and losing their cover of darkness, they commandeered a farm.
885, this is 885 Mobile. Let me give you the situation. We haven't met our objective yet. The roads were kind of rough. We're about halfway to our objective. We're going to get a fix on our location, and we're going to call in for helicopters to take us.
No longer sure if the Colombians they were trying to catch were even out there, the agents were forced to cancel their mission and call in helicopters to take them back to base. Maybe the informant had bad information, or maybe he just got them lost.
875 is 885 Mobile.
It's easy to get lost in Bolivia.
Piper 6, how are you doing on water and food? How are you doing on water and food?
We have no water. We're short on food. Over.
Meanwhile, the airstrip mission had also stalled. After 2 days, the team in the jungle was exhausted. The plane to pick up the coca paste had still not arrived, and their informant had disappeared.
That'll take place at 10 o'clock. We'll pull you out at that time. We'll put a new team in. Do you copy?
Good copy. Good copy.
Joe and Pam got back to base at 3 a.m., 51 hours after the operation began.
Possibly you were detected from where?
Pam feared the mission had been compromised.
So today, by 5 o'clock, 5:30, we knew after 5:30 a plane wouldn't come because of the darkness. We started thinking, well, you know, there's been a lot more activity, people walking around here today. We heard a lot more noise. The weather was good. Supposedly the coke was there. And I feel like we were burned.
If you'd been found out, I would think that most of the people would have just left the area. I mean, not wanting to be confronted by you if you decided to come out.
I don't know if we've been detected or not. I can't make that call.
In spite of the problems, Hartman decided to continue the mission with a new team. They waited 3 more days for a plane that never came.
We'll continue in a moment.
One network will tell you her story.
I love you, baby.
I love you too.
Another will tell you their story.
She's a sick girl.
Only ABC gives you the whole story.
I love him, and I love the sex.
I wasn't cheating on my wife.
She's the devil. I feel like I'm gonna die.
Drew Barrymore is Amy Fisher Sunday.
Next on Hunter, a burglar.
Part of the problem the United States faces in Bolivia is the sheer wildness of the place. From the Andes to the jungle. It is a country with a history of political instability and lawlessness. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid came here to hide. So did the Nazi war criminal Klaus Barbie. The communist revolutionary Che Guevara was captured and killed here in the 1960s. The poorest country in South America, Bolivia has virtually nothing the rest of the world wants to buy, except coca.
Where do Americans look to see progress?
Well, I think they look to see it in terms of, are there less hectares being grown? And the answer is yes here. Are we interdicting the product that's coming out? And the answer is yes.
Stop for a second, right there. The State Department Inspector General says less than 1% coming out of Bolivia is being seized, and the GAO, the General Accounting Office of the Congress, says no reduction.
Well, I don't know where the State Department Inspector General got his figures. I don't know how much is coming out. I don't think anybody knows how much is coming out because there's nobody out there checking on it.
But then how do you know you're making progress?
Because I know we're seizing some, and the alternative is to seize none. To say, we are not going to fight this thing. The alternative is to throw up your hands and say, you can do whatever you want. Let the drug flow in the United States.
This is the dilemma President Clinton will face. What the ambassador said sounds sensible. It's better to put up a fight than to surrender. But continuing to fight in defense of a failed strategy is a mistake that American presidents have made before. When things aren't going well, the U.S. government's response too often has been to escalate. Things are not going well in Bolivia. Still, funding for the anti-drug campaign here has increased over 700% in the last 4 years. U.S. agents in Bolivia say it's still not nearly enough. But will more helicopters, more guns, more agents, more money, more and more of the same ever make a difference? This is about as far from civilization as it gets, and it is here that Colombian traffickers have built one of the biggest, most sophisticated labs the DEA has ever found in Bolivia.
Have you seen the long pipe running over to the... This is at least 4,000 kilos a week. At least. These guys have the capacity to go 24 hours a day. Now, this is the most sophisticated lab I've seen. This thing's been around for a long time. They've got 2 recycling and actual chemical producing laboratories within this complex. There's over 14 buildings here.
Don Ferron has been running the DEA operation in Bolivia for the last 3.5 years. He was sent here because he's considered the best the DEA has. 5 years ago, there were no labs like this. Now Ferron and his agents tell us that for every lab they seize, there are hundreds more.
You didn't make America's drug policy down here, but you're charged with implementing it. If you were in total control, what would you do?
The system is very, very complicated right now. We have... There are Bolivian... The Bolivian political system needs to be notified before operations. Our inability to keep operational security is a very serious problem for us, having to go through this system of very elaborate notifications that quite often blows the operation.
Don Ferron is a representative of the U.S. government. He cannot say on camera what we know to be true. Virtually every American mission in Bolivia ends up being compromised because when it comes to the cocaine war, American and Bolivian interests are simply not the same. Carlos Barriga, the head of the Bolivian Special Narcotics Intelligence Force, is negotiating the surrender of a major trafficker, Ico Rivero. Rivero is turning himself in under a Bolivian government plan called the Repentance Program. The traffickers surrender in exchange for a promise they will not be extradited to the United States. The DEA had a lot of problems with that promise. They had no choice but to go along. DEA agent Keith Krakowski accompanied Barriga to pick up Rivero in the remote town of Santa Ana. Santa Ana was Rivero's choice, not the DEA's. Coming to Santa Ana makes the DEA nervous because they have fought the traffickers for control of this town before. Once they were driven away in a shootout with townspeople who earned their living from the drug trade. The man they came for, Ico Rivero, wasn't there. That man in the white shirt is Rivero's negotiator. Krakowski feared a setup.
When will his plane be here?
In an hour and 50 minutes, or 2 hours.
No, that's too much time.
2 hours, no more. That we have to leave. 2 hours.
You have 2 hours.
He has 2 hours to get here. I don't like staying here for 2 hours.
There are the special police, don't worry. Want me to get more special police?
Yeah, do it. Thank you.
As word spread through the town, dozens of people showed up at the airport.
It's going to arrive at 6:15. 6:15 now. Yeah, 6:15. They left San Borja at what time? It already left. They left 10 minutes ago.
The crowd grew to several hundred, including many members of Ico Rivero's family.
See the plane? It's coming. You see it?
Have the family go over there to say goodbye. Everybody over there. You have to go now. No more time for goodbyes.
And so Rivero surrendered. But his organization remains intact. An organization worth millions of dollars that employs hundreds of people and controls more than 80 aircraft. That is the DEA's problem with the Bolivian government's repentance program. They know that one surrender doesn't cripple an organization. Somebody else will simply take control. In fact, Ico Rivero rose to power after his brother turned himself in. The U.S. justice system will probably never get hold of either of them.
Do you think there's any chance that you're going to be moved to the United States?
No, I don't think so, because I don't find myself in a situation that would lead to that.
How long do you think you're going to spend in jail?
Whatever God is willing to give me as a result of a trial.
Well, not really. The Bolivian justice system will decide, and so far, 4 major traffickers who turned themselves in, as Ico Rivero did, have each been sentenced to fewer than 6 years. None was extradited to the United States. Because the DEA knows the limitations of jailing people like Ico Rivero, they have now developed another strategy. Get the planes. The DEA has an elaborate tracking system that identifies aircraft as they move in and out of remote jungle airstrips. But when they spot a plane they suspect is carrying cocaine, there is nothing they can do on their own except ask the Bolivians to seize it. This is what happens next. At the DEA's request, a search team from the Bolivian government is dusting this plane for traces of cocaine. Once again, the DEA is obliged to stand back while Bolivian law takes its course.
I'm not afraid of the drug test because I've never consciously carried drugs.
Although this pilot is accused of ferrying cocaine, Bolivian law allows not only him, but also his family, friends, attorneys, even a spokesman for the Pilots Association to watch and, moreover, try to influence the findings of the Bolivian government's chemist.
This part's supposed to be dry.
Yes, it's positive.
Despite the obstacles, the DEA got the plane. On this field alone, there are 26 aircraft the DEA has seized. But now the very success of this strategy is causing problems for Don Ferron, because by disrupting the traffickers' operation, the DEA also disrupts the flow of drug money.
We've got to keep the operational tempo up.
if we were to follow on with more operations like this, we could choke things down. But we're meeting with a lot of opposition right now.
What's the opposition amount to?
Well, the opposition is a combination of traffickers and politicians.
So you're being blocked, right?
At this stage of the game, I'd have to say we're being blocked.
That's rather frustrating.
It's very frustrating. For years, this has been a wide open area, basically without the rule of law. And so there are people that one day will fly a cattle rancher and the next day they'll fly a load of cocaine. And they're very much afraid.
And is this also where American and Bolivian interests come up against one another? So much of the economy in Bolivia depends now on coca and cocaine?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think it's, as we get into it, we find that it's much deeper woven into the fabric than we initially envisioned.
The Bolivian president.
All of the planes that have been grounded have been used for carrying cocaine. Is that reason to ground airplanes?
What has to remain clear is that we are not for drug trafficking, but we need well-studied and well-founded regulations to fundamentally respect the rights of citizens.
What does that mean?
For example, a pilot's right to work. He owns a plane, and then for whatever the reason, they find some trace of drugs, and his plane gets confiscated. He'll lose his possibility of earning a living and his means of livelihood.
Why should he fly a plane carrying cocaine in the first place?
The drug test is sometimes for small samples of drugs the passenger carried or consumed on the plane. This is not a sufficient reason to leave the pilot without his plane until a criminal investigation is completed.
I think you're saying something else. I think you're saying that a really aggressive anti-cocaine campaign gets in the way of the Bolivian economy. Is that possible?
If it's a bad campaign.
What's a bad campaign?
For example, if people don't take into consideration the reality of the country.
This is the reality of Bolivia. Coca is everywhere. Bolivia earns as much from the drug trade as from all its legal exports combined. All of life here is touched by the money coca generates, which means that truly shutting down the drug trade would cause the Bolivian economy to collapse.
Do you think Bolivians are glad to have the DEA, the CIA, the Army, the Navy, and the Border Patrol here?
I think Bolivians would probably prefer to, just like we would prefer to have a quiet life, not be involved in some of these things. But the world is not necessarily one that we can control.
How much power does the American ambassador have here? Somebody once described you as a viceroy, as the British viceroy in India when it was still a colony.
Oh, I think that's exaggerated. We have excellent relationships with the Bolivians. We have excellent access. We communicate very well and effectively together. There's no doubt in my mind that they know what our goals and our policies are here.
And if you want a guy out, he's out.
Depends on the guy.
If you say
depends on how hard we want to go to war.
Say that a guy in the process is corrupt, whether he's in the police or he's in the military or he's in the government apparatus, you want him out, he goes, right?
But I think the key here is, why do we want him out if we want him out?
Does the American ambassador in Bolivia have the power to make or break police officers, military officers, even politicians?
Without a doubt.
Does this mean that if the U.S. ambassador doesn't like a man you've appointed to government, he can ask you to get rid of him?
Yes, in practice it works that way. In practice it works that way.
Mr. President, this is it's a very honest admission. It must be very frustrating for you as the president of your country to give another country that much power.
Well, I don't know. It is frustrating. At any rate, it's a sobering reality. That is the least that can be said. It is a reality.
Pero es una realidad.
There is a threshold to Bolivian tolerance for American domination, no matter how much the U.S. is prepared to pay for the privilege. The U.S. show of force is being felt throughout the country, and there are signs it may have begun to backfire. In the long run, by exercising such a heavy hand in Bolivia, the United States may lose the best ally it has in the war on drugs.
If you suffer from an inflamed, itchy rash caused by eczema, psoriasis, or other skin irritations, you can get the relief medication formerly available only by doctor's prescription. It's the medicine in maximum strength cortisone 10. Look, cortisone 10 applied to this itchy rash gets under the itch for soothing relief and help in healing. See? The rash is gone. To relieve itchy rashes and skin irritations, use maximum strength cortisone 10 with the medicine doctors recommend most. Available without prescription.
Story, ABC News made 4 trips to Bolivia over the course of a year and a half, and we witnessed the entire scope of the American anti-drug effort there. What impressed us more than anything else was the dedication of the agents on the ground in the face of tremendous obstacles. Given an impossible number of small targets, Don Ferrone has decided to concentrate on mounting large-scale operations aimed at taking down entire organizations. Ferrone believes this is his only hope of turning the tide in America's favor. We were there during one of the largest missions the DEA has ever launched in South America.
Ya, perfecto, perfecto.
Perfect. And the other people? Do you think that they're over there?
The mission began with information provided by this informant, a sometime trafficker himself, talking to his radio contact in the town of San Borja.
Ya, perfecto. Entonces debe estar en el...
Yeah, perfect. Then he should be in the big town where I told you he had gone.
He wore a disguise because cooperation with U.S. agents could get him killed.
Now, we should be really careful when we arrest him. We should be careful of the Colombian group that is stronger and is operating around here.
This operation has been okayed by the powers that be, and I want to make certain that every step of the way that we have all the key players in. The problem is that the rainy season's coming on. We're going to have to make a move here.
The informant told the DEA about several high-level Colombian traffickers who'd virtually taken over San Borja, and Ferrone had worked for months to assemble helicopters, intelligence, manpower, and Bolivian government permission, everything he needed to mount a major assault on a Bolivian town.
We still have to pull this off in a schedule here.
48 hours before the mission began, with everything ready to go, Ferrone learned the Colombians had disappeared from San Borja. An operation that took months to plan fell apart.
What we're looking at now, Don, is 20 minutes of risk, real intense risk for the 18 to 25 people.
With his troops assembled, helicopters standing by, and in danger of losing hard-won Bolivian government cooperation, Ferrone faced a tough decision: pack up and go home, or pick a new objective. The DEA decided to make a last-minute switch. They knew of another town, San Joaquin, which was also under traffickers' control. It would become their new target.
3 arrest targets in 3 of the houses that will be seized.
Special Agent George Auflick was given only 48 hours to make the switch from San Borja to San Joaquin.
This is a great target. One of these guys, Lima Lobo, Cain Daza, Danilo, that's
Algunos de estos
In San Joaquin, you have 3 Bolivian traffickers. Who are they, and how important?
Well, the San Joaquin traffickers are very, very important. You have the town boss, who's called Cain Daza, who's known by, his name is Cain Daza. He is extremely important, and what happens in Bolivia, especially out here in the Beni, these small towns basically support Colombian and Bolivian, high-level Bolivian traffickers, and they create an atmosphere where you can come in and out. You can get protection, you can get aircraft, you can get refueled, you can get whatever you want.
The other two traffickers Ferron was after were a Bolivian named Limo Lobo and Danilo, a Colombian at the top of the DEA's list.
Are you in danger in this operation?
Absolutely. I think every law enforcement operation carries risk with it. This particular one carries, I would say, relatively high risk because we're dealing with Colombians. Colombians and Brazilians, in particular, seem to be more apt to shoot in this country.
An even greater danger was that the DEA would come under attack from a corrupt garrison of the Bolivian army that the traffickers paid off for protection. Getting control of the renegade garrison was crucial to the DEA, and so they arranged for this officer, Army Colonel Eduardo Toro, to be flown from the Bolivian capital La Paz with sealed orders. Because Ferron was so afraid of a leak, Colonel Toro was not told where he was going until we were airborne.
Yeah, he said he's inspected that garrison a bunch of times, and they've not been under control.
The letter contained orders from the Bolivian Army High Command confining the corrupt garrison to base for the duration of the DEA raid on San Joaquin.
The intelligence information we've received indicates that there has been collaboration with the traffickers, that they are currently working with certain elements, the town boss in particular.
Collaboration between the Army and the barracks in San Joaquin and the drug traffickers?
That's correct.
What does that say for tomorrow morning's mission?
It increases the risk factor dramatically.
I've got to insert the colonel sufficient time to get control, but not to get a leak.
Right.
And that's the trick. That's the real trick here, because if I get him in too long, there will be a leak. Because I've done it before in that village. If I do it too late, then they won't have time to get control of these guys, and we'll have people out that might start shooting at us.
Here's Ferron's plan. This advance squad would infiltrate San Joaquin just before dawn to surprise the traffickers in their beds. The main force would arrive by air moments later to provide backup and neutralize the garrison. The advance squad was dropped 11 miles outside San Joaquin, so no one in town could hear their helicopters. Ahead of them was an all-night walk through the jungle. Until the main force arrived, they would be on their own. At 3 a.m., back at mission headquarters, the main force gathered for a final intelligence briefing, amid rumors that something may have happened to put the new operation and the advance squad in jeopardy.
In the last 24 hours before the mission, you have been very worried about a leak.
Yes, that's a fair statement.
And
we have received information from a source that a leak has occurred. We can't substantiate that. It's one source, but it is troublesome. It listed San Joaquin as the target, but did that spook our people, and did they get the word in that town? Are our targets still in that town?
No. 120 ground troops, 14 helicopters, nearly every DEA aircraft in the country. Ferron was now gambling nearly every asset he had for the taking of San Joaquin, an operation that hadn't even existed 3 days earlier. As the main force approached, the advance squad, already on the ground in San Joaquin, hit their first targets. for own touchdown, he and Colonel Toro took off towards the corrupt army base to shut it down before it could attack the DEA-led forces.
He sido llamado por el comandante general del ejército y he recibido un memorándum.
The garrison commander, caught out of uniform, listened as Colonel Toro read from his orders. Orders drafted by the U.S. Embassy in La Paz and signed by the commanding general of the Bolivian army.
En voz alta para que nosotros sepamos su contenido, porque hasta el momento.
Señor Teniente Coronel Iberanzana Palacios.
My dear Colonel Palacios, by means of this document, I would wish to inform you that in the coming days in the jurisdiction of San Joaquin, elements comprised of the Special Forces for the fight against drug traffickers and the DEA will carry out operations against drug traffickers, and therefore you will carry out the following instructions. All of the members of your unit will remain in the barracks during the entire operation and will avoid contact with the civilian population. No member of your unit is authorized to participate in the operation. Upon completion of the mission, you will make the appropriate report to this command. In the hands of the all-powerful, signed, Comandante General.
45 minutes. And everybody was in their beds, apparently.
Yeah.
So it was a surprise.
Yeah.
By 9 a.m., the army barracks was no longer a threat, and the town of San Joaquin was under government control. More than 40 people had been arrested, including Eduardo Guzman, who the DEA said was one of the town's top traffickers. They also got this man, who the DEA claimed was an assassin working for the Colombians. And Limo Lobo, one of the DEA's 3 main targets. Slipping through the net was the DEA's number 2 target, Cain Daza, the town boss.
Where is your husband now?
Él no sé, pues salió ayer.
I don't know. He left yesterday. He hasn't come back. So as soon as I get in touch with him or he calls me, I'll tell him to come back to clear everything up.
Why did he leave yesterday?
He said he was going to the countryside. I don't know.
The mission's primary target, the Colombian Danilo, also eluded the DEA.
What did they say when you came in?
I asked him where her husband was since he left at 4 o'clock. And we heard you guys were coming. We didn't know when.
They'd heard that you were coming?
Yeah, they didn't know when.
The surprise wasn't very good. Somehow or another, I don't know what means they use. They find out. They know when you're coming. They know when you're passing through. They know how you're doing everything.
Here in San Joaquin, the DEA's worst fear was realized, again. Like so many times before, a major mission was compromised.
When there was a leak from here in Trinidad that you were going to strike on a particular day at a particular time, were you surprised?
No. Disappointed, mad, sad, but not surprised.
That's a tough environment to operate in.
Yeah, and for 2.5 years, seeing it happen repeatedly and repeatedly is very troublesome. We do everything we can possibly do to stop a leak from occurring, and then at the last minute, it seems to happen more often than not.
The American ambassador told us, "I'm optimistic we're going to win this. The Bolivians are going to win this, and we're going to help." But nothing we saw in Bolivia supports that. Even when the DEA raids labs, even when they seize planes, even when they catch traffickers, the bottom line remains the same. They are not stopping the flow of cocaine from Bolivia to the United States. Despite the dedication of the men and women we met in Bolivia, American money is being wasted there. Until now, the U.S. government has been fooling itself and fooling us into believing it has a strategy that will work. And that is what we must hope President Clinton understands. If he does not do things differently, then any government campaign to purge this evil from American life is doomed to failure. The cocaine war in Bolivia
is already lost. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.
Peter Jennings reporting. Brought to you by the Discover car.
Free, and aspirin cream is aspirin free.
Miss Barclay!
Conrad.
Room 801.
Once they were in love.
Tournament of Roses.